value addition for us to transform our exports. And the goal is to increase value added contribution from 9% to 20% by 2025 and growing into 2030. Therefore, contributing to foreign currency earnings. The ministry that we report to is the Ministry of Industry and Commerce. They have a transitional growth plan called Zimbabwe Industrial Reconstruction Growth Plan, and the objective are for export diversification and also value addition and beneficiation, speaking very well to the NDS1. Now, just to define competitiveness, competitiveness is a broad subject, but just to bring it down to our functions and our commission, it is the ability of a firm or a nation to offer products and services that meet the quality standards of local and world market at prices that provide adequate return on the resources employed or consumed producing them. We can also look at the UNIDO, which talks about industrial competitiveness on the capacity to increase their presence in international and domestic markets. There are a couple of strategies that can be employed to enhance competitiveness. I would like to stick to what we call the 3 C's of competitiveness. There should be capacity to compete. This is where a nation or a firm assesses whether its current production and its current processes are efficient to meet the market requirements that they exist in. Then the capacity to change there is need for a deliberate effort by the nation or by companies to make investments to adapt to fast market, changing markets. Then the capacity to connect. Without connection to various trade partners in various countries or various clients from your firm, you might not be able to be competitive. And therefore, you need to look at the relevant strategies that you need to have, such as maybe having digital communication technologies in your company, latest technology, and also a level environment within your business sector. Now, let's look at the current export profile in Zimbabwe, and these statistics go up to about 2023. If you look at those statistics, you realize that Zimbabwe exports have been growing from about 2019, and we're almost a double figure from 2013. I think we need to give a round of applause for our country there. We are doing quite well in terms of export. So the policies are paying off, but we still have a problem of imports. We have imports that are still growing, but they're not growing at the rate that the exports are growing. So it's a very good thing that we are seeing. So we need to continue singing this song of value addition and competitiveness so that we can be able to have a healthy trade balance. Now, if you look at your composition of exports in Zimbabwe, we have been exporting a lot of minerals and alloys and also commodities. Our biggest exports in Zimbabwe, I think close to about 80%, are comprised of minerals, which are commodities, and also raw tobacco. So it means that the structure of our exports is not facilitative enough for us to grow as an economy. There is less value addition and less exports of processed goods, which means that we're exporting jobs. We need to start strongly looking at our export composition and also embrace policies like the Zimbabwe Industrial Reconstruction Growth Plan so that we're able to create jobs and able to grow our nation's wealth. Now, if you look at manufactured exports by merchandise, you realize that it has been stagnating from about 2020, playing around 7% to 8%. We need to bring that narrative up by ensuring that most of our companies and firms are poised to be oriented towards market exports rather than just producing for domestic markets. Therefore, if we do that, we're able to create more jobs, we're able to attract investment, and able to grow our GDP. If you look at export destinations again, it has changed a lot. Initially, if you look at about 2019, our biggest trading partner was South Africa at around 50-something%. But now we're seeing the UAE and other markets in China coming up. And I'm quite sure it is because of the deliberate efforts that the government has done to engage and re-engage other markets. We want to see our export destinations being so diversified so that when there is a cold in South Africa, we don't sneeze in Zimbabwe. We need to diversify this so that at least we are able to be in a fair setting in terms of our export destinations. Now, the Zimbabwean export profile is affected mostly by vulnerabilities that we have, like price volatility, low value addition, and reliance on limited markets, which I mentioned that we need to diversify. The growth barriers is that we have infrastructure gaps. Energy, we know that many companies have been complaining about using diesel and using expensive ways of generating production. We need to be looking at that. Our transport sector, yesterday they were talking about the NRZ. We need the NRZ to come online, that it can reduce the cost of moving goods and therefore reduce the production cost. Even the regulatory complexity, we need to look at the environment and ensure that we adopt and listen to what the president said when he opened Parliament this year, when he said that we need to look at our regulatory environment and streamline it. And we're working with that to ensure that that happens. Limited technology adoption, we need to have a culture of looking at what type of technology do we need to bring in to be at par with our competitors and also be able to compete in the global village. Now, the trade barriers that we can't have, the reality that we have is that most of our exports are raw materials, and there are also things that come with that. Trade barriers and commodity prices are determined by the international market. So whenever there is a squeeze of the commodity prices, we get affected in terms of our export earnings. One thing that I want to stress is that, for example, we might export more in terms of volume, but get less in terms of revenue because the commodity prices would have changed from year to year. So we need to understand that. That's the reason why the government is talking about beneficiation and value addition. That will remove us from this trap. There is something that is called a resource curse that we might see in Zimbabwe. Many studies have taken place and they've shown that in the tobacco sector, we are only generating about 1 billion. We could go to about 5 billion if we beneficiate and we value add on our tobacco. So we need to start thinking of those issues so that we can become more and more reliant on value-added goods and improve our revenue generation of exports. Now, if we look at barriers to trade, we have got tariffs that are there. Like, for example, the tobacco that we are exporting, there are high EU duties on tobacco, and this erodes price competitiveness. And also, there are non-tariff barriers like the SPS rules. How many are exporting horticulture products here, or know somebody exporting horticulture products? Okay, I'll tell you something. On horticulture products, you understand that there are some certifications like EcoCert, Global Gap, and these are expensive to maintain for general people like us. We have recycled many people, and we need to assist them from the banks and from the financing houses. Right? They can be able to have loans that they can be able to maybe have these global gap certifications and able to export to these markets very well. And we face about 40% rejection of SME shipments because of these NTBs. 40%? Yes, 40% rejection. On strategies, we need to look at value chain integration. Looking at the lithium, we've got so much lithium. We could be, Zimbabwe is the world's 6th largest lithium producer. We could go into lithium production. On tobacco, agro-processing hubs in Zimbabwe set so that we can beneficiate on our tobacco and other commodities that come off our land. We need to look at innovation and standards, adopt fourth industrial revolution technology, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence. We need to go that route for us to be able to compete with other nations and do well. We need to certify our products. It's not enough for us to be producing products and innovating. We need to have our products certified. The ISO standard, the SARS certification are very important for us to position our products as competitive within the global markets. Now, for SMEs, there is finance that is needed. The solutions that we need to have them going onto e-platforms, and we need to put them into clusters where they can grow and help each other to enter into bigger markets. We need to do that. Then on micro enterprises, you see, we've got a lot of people in Zimbabwe. The SME survey we did with the International Trade Center in 2023 showed that about 60% of SMEs are informalized in Zimbabwe. And some of them are even doing it in cottage industries or backyard industries. We need to start thinking as a nation how we help these people to get onto the international or even the export trade. We can actually take examples of things like Amazon Handmade, which looks at small people that are producing handicrafts and groups them together and then gives them a place where they can put their product that they can be able to export. We need to look at agri SMEs, where we put them into clusters and come up with brands like Zimbabwe brands for agro-processed products, so that they're able to compete and able to be showcased to the global village so that they can be able to export. We can go into tech leapfrogging. For example, in Kenya, there is M-Pesa and AI learning centers in South Africa. They have used tech leapfrogging so that they can create applications for SMEs and micro SMEs who can be onboarded there, that they can be able to be showcased to the world. Now, success stories in Zimbabwe. We don't want to be talking about these things and not showing success stories. There's a company called Glide Foods. How many people know Glide Foods here? Okay. Glide Foods started in a kitchen. It was a micro enterprise. Now it is becoming a very big force to be reckoned in the health food sector. I think we need to give them a round of applause. They've done extremely well. They're actually exporting even to the UK and into the region. If we have many companies like this coming off our university graduates and people that say, no, we're not going to wait to be employed, we're going to create and run with the Vision 2030 and create our own companies and focus on exporting, I'm quite sure we'll get somewhere as a nation. These are just the trade agreements. I will not go through this. There's a lot of trade agreements we can leverage on in Zimbabwe. You can speak to Zimtrade or speak to us. We can be able to take you through this. Now, just as a parting shot, I want to quote Potter. He says, everything matters for competitiveness. We need to create policies that create competitiveness. Infrastructure gaps and energy issues and all regulatory issues need to be resolved so that we are able to have a business environment that fosters competitiveness. Now, the perspective that we need to move from, initially there was price competitiveness that the global village looked at, where it was issues to do with labor, the cost, the productivity. It graduated to quality, where you're moving from now numbers, but to moving to brand equity and quality issues. And the thing that we are also be looking at is outcome competitiveness, where we are looking at issues that are real and tangible in terms of the competitiveness, as opposed to saying we are just going to have a better price or just going to have a better unit labor cost. Let's move more towards having high expectation, like the happiness of our citizens and the work-life balance and social and income pillars all being balanced. That's where we should move more. I think that's where Vision 2030 is talking about. Because when it says it's an upper middle income society, competitiveness is all about prosperity. And prosperity is about each and every individual here being able to live a good standard of life. Thank you so much.